as you saw in the program, this is a 5-part presentation. In the last 4 times I've done seminars at BC Camp Meeting, they were on some form of country living, either preparing for the end times kind of things, or variations of if you couldn't buy or sell, what would you do? If you couldn't buy or sell, what would you have to do different than you're doing right now to survive? And so that was the emphasis of these presentations in the past. And we would touch on gardening, and we would touch on alternative energy and moving into the country and all these different aspects. But I decided this time to focus just on the gardening. We're going to do a little bit of, update of why it's important. But in general, each of the 5 days, we're going to look at different methods to do sustainable gardening. And by the word sustainable, I mean something that can keep going. You don't have to go and buy seeds. You can grow enough food to live off of, is the goal. So that's sustainable gardening. So this session, we're starting with, and this was a Brad Thorpe suggestion a year ago. He said, a lot of our BC members still live in the city. And so don't just talk about building a big garden in the country. Give something to do with the people that haven't made the move yet. And so our first session is going to look at ways that you can garden wherever you live right now, including, as you can see from this picture, in a high-rise with a balcony. And so we're going to look at examples, real-world examples of people that do not live in the country. Maybe they have a backyard, maybe they're in an all-cement situation, and we're going to look at different ideas, different methods of gardening that can be done without necessarily having a plot of land. And then the next sessions will be more out in the country type topics, and I'll tell you about those in a second.
What does this all have to do with the final message? What is the point of all this? Wouldn't you just be more effective and get more evangelism done if you didn't worry about all this stuff? If you just, went to the city and was there and giving Bible studies and, why waste time with plants? Why waste time with these different animals and livestock and things that seem like it's not the point? Because the point is to give the final warning and to give the 3 angels messages. But the thing is, as James says, faith without works is what? It's dead. And if we're saying that something is coming, but we're not doing something about it, might be hard for people to believe what you're trying to tell them. When we do what we are trying to warn people about, it has so much more power to the message. And you can see I have all these different off-grid sort of hand old tools around me. When we're talking about the mark of the beast that's coming, this system, this global system, this one world order that the Bible actually talks about, and this is the part that this remnant people who keep the commandments of God, all 10 of the commandments, and have the spirit of prophecy, which means they're presenting things that have not come to pass. We're not talking about only past prophecy, we're talking about future prophecy. This mark of the beast is not a good thing. Why would people take the mark of the beast then? Well, if we go back one chapter again, Revelation 13, and we go to verse 16, and he causeth all, and that word causeth, he's going to force all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. Verse 17, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So if you do not take the mark of the beast, then you won't be able to buy or sell. And that's buy or sell anything. Now, we seen something like this back when the pandemic was happening. Got to be careful what words I use here. They were not allowing you to buy certain things that were non-essential. And this scared a lot of people and actually drove a lot of people to study again and to wake up. But then after things happened, everybody fell back asleep. But we're told that there's going to be a time where it's not just non-essentials, it's going to be nothing if you don't take the mark of the beast. Well, if you can't buy or sell anything, what are you going to do?
Many of you are familiar with Mackenzie Drevitt and Amazing Discoveries. British Columbia, north of here, what, 100 Mile House maybe up that way? Where? Past it? Okay. This video just came out. Somebody sent it to me. I go, man, I got to show part of this for our presentation. Okay, so this topic we're talking about, like I said, we're starting with, if you still live in the city, how can you learn how to garden? How can you get started in doing some of this stuff? And then as you transition, you can take some of those skills and put them into a bigger garden. My website is called preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com, and we have had this for 10 years. We put up a video every week about Friday, and they're all related to country living, gardening, end time Bible prophecy, all kinds of things related to that circle of topics. It's all free. We have 550 videos that we've made. So that's too many to go to YouTube and try to find what you're looking for. So the website organizes the topics. So if you want to do sustainable gardening, all the links to the videos for gardening are all together. So I'll show you a little bit of that after, but that's where you find it. That's your portal to get to all the content that we've made, is preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Today, we're going to talk about the need for country living, the importance of learning to garden, and examples of those who garden in the city. By the way, we're going to have a handout at the end of each session, and so some of the details will be in print for you. So tomorrow we're going to do a method called the square foot gardening method. I had not heard of this more than a couple of years ago, but there's an Adventist lady who's a certified square foot gardener who teaches this, and I stumbled onto her and we got acquainted online, and she sent me content for this episode tomorrow. Wednesday we're going to do the Mittlighter gardening method. Have any of you ever done that? Anybody? Okay. You will find it interesting. This actually, there was a time when Mittlighter was doing gardening here at this campus, and there's a picture in this presentation of what they did here years ago. Oops, I missed one. Thursday we're going to do the Ellen White method, and then Friday we're going to do the Back to Eden gardening method. Okay, today's presentation, if you look at these posters here, the first one is Sustainable Country Living. What happened is, I've done these seminars for 10 years, and people would say, we'd talk about the grid going down, or you can't buy or sell, or whatever, and then you can't get on the internet. And they said, what are we going to do when we can't get to your videos? you know, you need to write a book with the critical information in it so I can have it on my shelf collecting dust. And then when the world falls apart, I can go, oh yeah, I've got that book, and pull it off the shelf, and now I've got it. Because you won't be able to get to the videos, particularly if YouTube cancels me. You know they do that. We have been canceled. I've had 3 videos canceled on my channel. So I'm really careful to try to not get, 3 strikes you're out kind of thing. So anyway, the content of most of what we're doing here, with the exception of the square foot gardening, is in the book. And so we're going to have some of those available if you want, or you can buy them on Amazon. So what about me? There's people that in seminars every time at the end, they'll say, well, I know we're told to move out into the country and have a garden and all that. What about me? I'm a widow. I can't do that. I can't chop firewood and all that. I'm 80 years old. Or we'll have another family, a young family, say, I don't have any money. How can I move out in the country? And I believe that God will make ways where these kinds of people can connect together when it's really important to be able to do that. So what do we do while we're still in the city? Ellen White specifically says, don't run out half-cocked, my words, and just go. Don't be in a panic. Be methodical, plan, be organized about it. Don't be like the guy that ran off to do some business he didn't know anything about and he failed. And so sometimes you're in the planning stage. Some of you have been praying for years. Where should I go? How do you want me to get out of my situation? And we need to be patient and pray, and God will provide when the time's right. There is the need to move, but some people haven't, and so we're going to address that today. And then we're going to talk about off-grid alternatives. Actually, the book is built on that. We talk about off-grid, and we think of power. I'm off-grid. That means I'm off the power grid. But my perception is, if you can't buy and sell, anything you normally buy is from the system. Whether it's Walmart, or whether it's the power company, or whether it's water, or whether it's sewage, or whatever. So in the book, and in my previous seminars, we address these different grids, medical grids and things like that. So we're not going to spend much time on that in this session, but it's in the book.
Are you worried about the rising cost of food, or even worse, a food crisis, running out of food, no food at all? Well, a worldwide fertilizer shortage, supply problems, energy crisis, and even a lack of fruit and veg workers is putting pressure on food supplies. And how about inflation? It's out of control. The only thing that's been going down fast in the last few years is the IQ of our politicians. Well, it's enough to drive you bananas. So if we can't rely on governments and big corporations, and we can't, well then we must take steps on an individual level to buffer ourselves against hard times.
For our personal experience, we were in Arizona. We spent the winters in Arizona and the summers in Washington State, where our residence was. And we were in Arizona, and my wife, Kathy here, went to the grocery store one day, and the whole entire produce section was empty. And we had been planning to move out of Dodge and get in the country, but we hadn't done it yet. And I was even doing seminars about the importance of getting out in the country, and we hadn't done it yet this time. So we were planning real serious and doing lots of research about how to be independent and all that. So she goes to the grocery store, and the shelves were absolutely bare in the produce section. And it really shocked her, because that's what we've been talking about. Do you realize that if things go bad, in 3 days, the grocery store shelves will be empty? Done. And you won't be able to buy it because it's not there. So anyway, she asked the produce manager, said, what's the deal? How come there's no produce? He said, well, our truck hasn't arrived today yet. All it took is one truck not making it, and the shelves were bare. It didn't take 3 days. So that gave us some goosebumps and something to think about. So then we went back home to Washington, and it's winter, and there was a power failure, and we're on a city lot, just like Arizona, not independent at all. And it got cold, and we had, no heat. And so we go, oh, I know. We just built the house. It had a natural gas fireplace. Cool, natural gas is still working. It's an electrically controlled natural gas fireplace, and we couldn't light it, even with a match. And so it's like, man alive, there's our second wake-up call of the seriousness of this. And then we live in Washington State. The first place in North America to have a COVID death was in Kirkland, Washington, at a nursing home that I believe originally was owned by Adventists. I don't know if this Life Care Centers is anymore. But I was teaching a Sabbath school class at our church, and the county health person had just said, after this had happened with this guy dying in this nursing home, said, if you have some overlying medical conditions, you need to really take precautions, okay? So I'm telling my Sabbath school class this, and I said, I'm diabetic, I'm over 70, I've got this other medical thing hanging over me. I said, this is the last day I'm going to teach Sabbath school. I'm going to now be staying at home, and if you want, I'll do it online. I had 45 people in the class. I had 2 doctors in the class. I'm reading the body language of the 2 doctors. The one doctor, I'm imagining saying, you're out of your mind. You're overreacting. And then the other doctor's going, good idea. The very next Sabbath, our church was empty. And the pastor is standing in front of a camera. That was it. That's how quickly things changed. So we've seen things change in our lives in Arizona, in Washington, and then we've all seen it globally. And then, of course, then you didn't have any food. All of a sudden, everybody's buying toilet paper at Costco, right? So don't think for a minute that things can't change in a hurry. And Ellen White says the last things are going to happen in rapid succession. So once the ball starts rolling, we're going to see some serious stuff happen in a hurry, I believe. So let's switch gears for a second and look at some of the counsel from the Spirit of Prophecy. This is Country Living, page 5, paragraph 4. Instead of the crowded city, seek some retired, and that term means something quiet and out in the country. It doesn't mean fall asleep. Some retired situation where your children will be, for as far as possible, shielded from temptation, and there train and educate them for usefulness. So one reason to move in the country is if you're a parent, it's going to be better for the kids. Another one's to avoid danger. Page 7, paragraph 2. The time is near when the large cities will be visited by the judgments of God. In a little while, these cities will be terribly shaken. By the way, if you go to my website and go to the spiritual end time lessons section, there's a study that I did, because this really intrigued me. God's going to have judgments on the cities. And I researched the cities that she mentions by name and the ones that we would assume she would have mentioned by name that aren't named. Very, very interesting. That's all I'm going to say. Go to the website. Look for the one about the destruction of the cities. So one reason to leave the cities is to get out of harm's way. Counsel will lead the cities to avoid destruction. Calamities will come, calamities most awful, most unexpected, and these destructions will follow one after another. Then Ellen White says we should prepare before the overflowing scourge shall come upon the dwellers of the earth. The Lord calls upon all who are Israelites indeed to prepare for that event. There's not one family in 100 who will be improved physically, mentally, or spiritually by residing in the city. Faith, hope, love, happiness can far better be gained in retired places where there are fields and hills and trees. If in the providence of God you can secure, notice it doesn't say buy. Sometimes you go to these kind of seminars about country living and you got to buy this, and you got to buy that, and spend this money and buy this land. And that's not the counsel. The counsel is secure it. And sometimes people get them for free. If you go to the section on our website about country living testimonies, watch the second video from Montana. It's a miracle. God, this family did not have money for country living, and God provided them not only a country home, but an actual country resort with cabins and everything. It's an amazing story. She tells it on the video in her own words. So if in the providence of God, the time has come when as God opens the way, families should move out of the cities, the children should be taken into the country. Parents can secure small homes. Notice she doesn't say you got to have a big house. Don't even have to have big property. Parents can secure small homes in the country with land for cultivation, where they can have orchards and where they can raise vegetables and small fruits. As God commandment keeping people, we must leave the cities. As did Enoch, we must work the cities but not dwell in them. Again and again, the Lord has instructed that our people are to take their families away from the cities into the country where they can raise their own provisions. Now this is what I hang my whole point of view on right here. For in the future, the problem of buying and selling will be a very serious one. That's the reason to move into the country, mostly, because if you can't buy or sell and you're in the city, even in the suburbs on a city lot, if you grow a garden in your backyard, your neighbors are probably going to steal it. So so that's why I say the problem of buying and selling will be a serious one. We need to be able to do everything that we need besides food to be able to not have to depend on the systems of the world. So this is an example. There's no sound. There's some people that have a little garden. And look how high above the ground this is. This is an apartment where they are growing on their balcony. So how to get started? Planning, mapping containers, planning how to arrange them, maximizing the harvest. Succession planning, that means planting things over and over so they keep growing through the year. Space and determine how much direct sunlight every day. You want to have 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight for most. Tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers need more sunshine. Check the seed packets for information about the instructions for planting. Do not exceed the weight for your balcony. Whoops. How to get started. The cost. The first 3 years cost more since one invests in containers, tools, and expanding the garden. Quote, grow your own seedlings from seeds instead of buying plants. So if you go to our website under Sustainable Gardening, we have a section or two on how to save seeds. You probably realize that if you go to the store and buy seeds and you try to save the seeds and plant them again, because they're hybrid, you're not going to get what you thought you did. So let's say you have two or three different kinds of plants and they mix them. When you save a seed and plant it again, it's going to be all weird and shaped weird or whatever. So there are seeds, and we have some samples here today to show you of ones that are not hybrid. They're not GMO. They're sometimes they're called heritage seeds because they've been passed down from generation to generation. So that's what you're looking for when you want to be able to save seeds. And again, on the website, there are videos on how to do that. West Coast Seeds in British Columbia is a really good source. Yeah, it's a really good source. Yep. Yep. But you need to look for that specific, like Johnny's. Well, I mentioned a few here. Yeah, open pollinated is the technical term. That means it's not been crossbred or GMO or any of that other stuff. Okay. I guess we haven't done this slide yet. Container selection. Buy the same shape and sizes to stack them easily at the end of the season in the winter. Have holes in the bottom so they can drain. Use plastic containers because they're lightweight and durable instead of clay or wooden boxes, especially if you're on a balcony. Smaller containers dry out quicker than large ones, but they're easier to move. So if you have small ones, you have to water it a little more. A plant caddy with wheels makes it easy to move potted plants with the dirt still in it. And grow bags, by Epic is a brand of grow bags. They're 30 gallons usually are the lightest. Note the weight of the container with soil and plants, and understand the deck balcony capacity. Again, don't make your apartment deck fall down because you have too much dirt up there. Deep rectangular planters with feet to elevate the pot off the deck for ventilation and circulation are good for tomatoes, peppers, peas, and carrots. Shallow, long window boxes with feet to elevate pot off the deck for ventilation and circulation are good for lettuce, radishes, and herbs. Round pots are great for tomatoes. Be sure large enough to have the tomato cage. A tomato cage is a metal deal to keep the plants from falling over. Self-watering containers, a chamber inside the container. One waters less frequently if you have self-watering and won't leak unless overfilled with water. Ensure that you have the correct container size for the items that you wish to grow. 7 to 10 gallon containers for determinate. Tell me what that word means.
It's for a specific height.
The height? Okay, thank you. Determinate tomatoes which grow to a set size. Yes, thank you. Trellis for peas, dwarf sugar peas, and cucumbers, Space Master and patio snackers. So the point is you don't want to have plants that get too big. We've got a greenhouse and we've got some tomato plants that are probably 10 feet tall. Well, you don't want to have that big of tomatoes on the back on a deck. Okay, now let's talk about the soil, the growing medium. Use bag potted mixture. Unless you have a big garden, then you might get a truckload. But if you're just doing potted plants on a deck or something in a small space, then you'd buy them in bags. Add compost and extra nutrients, nutrition such as organic fertilizer, and amend each season. In other words, add a little bit each season. We're going to talk more about amendments and that kind of thing a little later. Sun exposure, provide proper exposure for sun-loving or shade plants. So you have to figure out, does this kind of plant like the sun or not, and then you position it accordingly. Meet sunlight requirements for plants that you want to grow. Choose plants to fit the balcony space. Watering and tending. Soil in pots dries out quickly, so compared to raised beds or a garden. So if you're going to do pots above ground, you're going to have to water more often. How often do you water depends on the sun exposure, on the kind of plant, and the container size and type. When watering, water thoroughly. Check if it needs staking and check for disease. Now let's talk about fertilizer. Nutrients are washed out faster from a container. Fertilize once every 2 weeks. Granular fertilizer when planting lasts longer. Liquid fertilizer throughout the season with an all-purpose fertilizer. Vertical planting is another way to get use of small space. You can utilize vertical space, space saver, stackable planters for vegetables with shallow roots such as lettuce and radishes. What to grow? Grow what you eat. If you grow stuff you think you ought to grow and you don't like eating it, what's the point? So you want to plant it according to what you already like to eat. Select seeds that are dwarf, patio, or bush varieties, so they're not too tall. Vegetables, suggestions: bush green beans, cucumbers, kale, lettuce, peas, peppers, radishes, spinach, Swiss chard, tomatoes, zucchini, and for herbs, basil, dill, parsley, rosemary, and thyme. Companion planting. This means some plants like to work together and some don't work together at all. So you want to think about, if you're going to have two plants side by side, which is going to be. So for basil, improves vigor and flavor of tomatoes and peppers, and it repels aphids and tomato hornworm. Beans, avoid bulb chives, garlic, and onions. Beets, avoid planting near pole beans. Carrots, avoid planting with dill, parsnips, and potatoes. Chives improves the flavor of carrots and tomatoes. Avoid planting near beans and peas. Corn, avoid planting next to tomatoes. They are both attacked by the corn earworm. Cucumbers, avoid planting near potatoes. Nasturtiums are said to improve the flavor and growth of cucumbers. A lot of this you can search on the internet, but the key is look up companion planting. So if you like tomatoes, figure out what works good with it and what you should avoid. Okay. Succession planting. That means planting different intervals of time so that you can have, say, radishes. They grow fast. They use them quick, and you can do them again a little later, so you can have them through the summer and the fall. Plant new rows of continuous supply and always growing. So you can see from this picture, these are the different successions of the same plant. Avoid planting near carrots and tomatoes. Onions, avoid onions near peas and beans. Peas, avoid planting near onions. Radish, avoid potatoes. Allow some radish to bloom to prevent pests of squash and cucumber. Sage repels both cabbage moth and carrot rust fly. Great year-round companion plant. Spinach, avoid potatoes. Squash, avoid brassicas like broccoli and cauliflower or potatoes. Marigolds and nasturtiums repel numerous squash pest plants. Kathy puts marigolds, right, in her garden. It looks pretty, but it's there for a reason, to keep the bugs away. Tomatoes, avoid brassica and dill. And by the way, brassica is like cauliflower and broccoli. It's a family. And dill is called dillweed in Alberta, and it's because it's a weed. It'll grow. So it's a good idea to put it in its own pot than in your garden, unless you really like lots of it. Okay, so thank you for reminding me to go back to that slide. Winter growing. Now, some of you, I'm sure, don't live on a mild coastal region of British Columbia. For some of you, it might be way north, and this may not help you, but in mild coastal regions like Vancouver, kale survives outdoors all winter, but plant the seed in July or August so it's mature by fall. We tried planting lettuce in our greenhouse late in the summer, thinking we could run it through the winter. Well, it needs to already be grown by the time it gets cold, and it didn't work even though we covered it with a little tent inside the greenhouse and put lights in there. It didn't. You have to have it mature before the cold hits, is the point. So in this case, if you're doing kale in Vancouver, you would outdoors, you'd plant the seeds in July and August so it's mature by fall. Pick the leaves continually through the winter. Okay, growing sprouts. Growing superfood in a glass jar, sprouting seeds like alfalfa, broccoli, or radish. 2 tablespoons small sprouting seeds in a quart jar. Cover with water and soak overnight. Put on sprouting lid and drain the water. Then add fresh water and swirl the seeds in the jar and drain. Rinse 2 to 3 times a day. Repeat each day. Can eat when the sprouts are about 1 inch long, which is about 4 or 5 days. That reminds me, I used to do a lot of backpacking and wilderness survival, and edible plants was of real interest to me. And we used to say for some plants, you grow the plant, you collect the plant, put it in a pot with a rock and rinse it, and then take the water off, put more water in, rinse it, put the water off, put some more water in, throw the water away, throw the rock away, throw the plant away. Because it's no good. That reminded me of that. Microgreens grow with full spectrum lighting. Full spectrum lighting is probably this as compared to a fluorescent light or an incandescent bulb. This has all of the different frequencies of light. And so that's what you need if you're going to use a grow light. So this is a lady showing her balcony, and it's amazing how high they are, for one thing, and how much they're growing. It's really pretty cool. I've never lived in a high-rise, so that kind of spooks me. That's a pretty big balcony for a high-rise.
I've been gardening for many years now using only containers and very limited space. My balcony is only 84 square feet, and I pack it with anywhere from 25 to 30 plants every spring, summer, and fall. Over the years, I've learned quite a lot growing in containers and utilizing my small space, and I want to share some of that knowledge with you guys today, hopefully inspire a few of you to get growing no matter what size your outdoor space is. So let's go ahead and get started. My first tip for growing in a small space is to make sure you are utilizing your vertical space. One way I do this is growing in a stackable planter. I love using this planter to grow all different types of lettuces, which is what I'm showing here, but you could easily grow other plants as well as long as they have a shallow root system. In this planter, I'm growing about 12 heads of lettuce, so you could see just how much you can grow in such a small space. I highly recommend you try this if you're looking to grow more in less space. Another way I utilize my vertical space is by growing in hanging baskets. I've grown strawberries every year in my hanging baskets because they drape over the edge of the container. It keeps them away from squirrels and pests as they're hanging in the air. And yeah, you can grow a lot of strawberries. I like to grow the everbearing variety so you get multiple harvests throughout the season. Here is my hanging basket that I use for all of my herbs, and this is another great way to plant multiple herbs together in a small space. You can also use different trellises or supports for your plant to get it to grow upwards. So this is a sugar pea, this is actually a dwarf variety, and I've just used a trellis to keep the plant growing upwards. I've also done this for my cucumber plant, cherry tomato plant, and different ones that you want to grow up taller instead of wider. This allows the plant to be more compact while also providing it with support as it grows. Moving on to tip number 2, which is really important, and that's growing container-friendly plants. When you're growing in containers, it really does matter which type of plants you are choosing. Certain varieties do better in containers, and it can get a little confusing with how many different seeds there are. One of the main things you're going to be looking for on the package is a dwarf, patio, or bush variety of seeds. So this is a bush variety of cucumber opposed to a vining. It's going to grow a lot better in a container. Along with bush zucchini, it's the same kind of thing. You don't really want a huge vining plant. It's better to grow a bush variety that's more compact. Another great choice for containers is tomatoes, and you most likely want to grow a determinate variety, so that's one that doesn't continue to grow in size. It'll only grow to a few feet tall and then set all of its fruit. I prefer growing this in my container garden as it takes up way less space than an indeterminate variety. Another type of seed to look for is a bush variety of green beans. This is a tender green. You can also grow all different types of peppers in containers. They're only going to grow to be 3 to 4 feet tall, so they make really good container plants. I love growing banana peppers, hot peppers, bell peppers. Any type that you like is going to do really well in a container. Another thing I really enjoy planting is kale, and this is of course a dwarf variety of kale. This type of kale doesn't get too big, but it's still very high producing. And as I mentioned earlier, strawberries are another great choice. They are a container-friendly plant. They do really well in containers, and they definitely are a staple in my summer garden. Leafy greens are another great choice for your small space garden. All different types of varieties are going to do really well in a container with limited space. Some of my favorites include romaine, loose leaf lettuce blends, arugula, spinach, and Swiss chard. Tip number 3 is companion planting. This is a great way to maximize the space in your garden. Planting multiple plants together also allows for better pest control, pollination, and just overall improving the health of your plant. I like to do this every year with my herb garden, so here are a few herb companions: basil, rosemary, oregano, thyme, parsley, dill. All of these herbs are going to grow really well together. If you're planting tomatoes in your small space garden, there's quite a few companions. They include basil, marigolds, lettuces, and carrots. Marigolds in particular can help keep away unwanted pests and insects, and basil is said to enhance the flavor of your tomatoes. If you're a pepper lover like me, popular companions include oregano, marjoram, basil, onions, and lettuces. Similar to tomatoes, basil will help your peppers taste better, and oregano, marjoram, and lettuces acts as a ground cover around your peppers. This helps to crowd out weeds and unwanted insects from getting to your plants. Another way I like to take advantage of companion planting is by planting multiple lettuces together. Lettuce has all different companions, but a few of my favorites to mix together that I think grow really well together is anything from spinach to arugula, romaine, and leaf lettuces. You can really experiment and grow a whole bunch of different lettuces in the same small space. My final tip for this video is going to be succession planting. This is a great way to make sure you have a continuous supply and you always have something to harvest in your garden. Succession planting is the practice of seeding your crops at intervals of 7 to 21 days. So maybe you have a few plants already growing in your container like I do here, and then I'm going to go ahead and sow some new seeds. That way I always have a continuous supply to harvest from. I really enjoy doing this with my leafy greens, my green onions, and chives. I'm just showing a close-up of the container here. You can see the larger ones that have already grown to full size. And I've gone ahead and sowed a few more seeds into the container, so as I harvest and use these green onions, I have new fresh growth popping up in the bottom. This is a foolproof way to utilize your small space and make sure that you always have something fresh growing in the garden. Here is my lettuce container. You can see the larger growth and then the smaller little seedlings that have popped up. It also does really well for how the plant grows. Look how dense and full this lettuce is. And I'm going to show you by pulling back some of the leaves here that I do still have the smaller growth in the corners. Just make sure that the seedlings that are smaller are still getting adequate sunlight. I also do this with my herbs. Here's an example of my dill. So lots of growth happening, and I've sown a bunch of seeds in the bottom. So as I trim this away, I have more fresh dill growing.
I decided to build a solar-powered, self-watering, super stylish, modular planter that's totes easy to build. This planter design had to meet some very specific criteria. First, it had to look good because it's up at the house and my husband Adam has very fancy taste. It also had to completely care for itself because I'm not exaggerating when I say I leave the house in the morning to go milk the cow and I very rarely come back before it's time to cook dinner. And of course, the last thing is that it needs to be easily accessible to the kitchen, which it is. Using these storage totes in this design was not only convenient for me because I just moved across the country and had a whole bunch of them to spare, but also because it literally allows me to have a modular garden. I could have 6 different planters planted with different plants and switch them out as needed. The real magic of the self-watering garden starts right here. This solar panel collects the sun's energy and powers a little timer attached to a pump. The timer tells the pump when to go off, and the pump, using these 2 little sensors, can gather water from any kind of rain collecting device. The water is sucked up through this little filter, through this tube, all the way up to the garden. I absolutely love this planter for so many reasons. It's easy to build. It actually only cost me about $10 worth of materials to build the whole thing. It provides the herbs right by my kitchen where I wanted them. The solar-powered rain collection system delivers water right to my plants, but not so much that it drips down on my deck and makes a mess. I also really love this planter design because it's completely adaptable to whatever your needs may be. If you have deck space for this exact design, great. But if you're in a rental situation where you don't have space for a permanent garden, you can actually lose the legs off of here and add more modules so that you have even more growing space that's still completely portable. The real magic of the self-watering garden starts right here. This solar panel collects the sun's energy and powers a little timer attached to a pump. The timer tells the pump when to go off, and the pump, using these two little sensors, can gather water from any kind of rain collecting device. The water is sucked up through this little filter, through this tube, all the way up to the garden. I absolutely love this planter for so many reasons. It's easy to build. It actually only cost me about $10 worth of materials to build the whole thing. It provides the herbs right by my kitchen where I wanted them. The solar-powered rain collection system delivers water right to my plants, but not so much that it drips down on my deck and makes a mess. I also really love this planter design because it's completely adaptable to whatever your needs may be. If you have deck space for this exact design, great. But if you're in a rental situation where you don't have space for a permanent garden, you can actually lose the legs off of here and add more modules so that you have even more growing space that's still completely portable.
Notice she said even if you're renting, you could do that kind of a planter box and be able to move it. So now I'm going to show you some examples. These are a little dated because I didn't go to Amazon fresh, and it's US money. But here's a fabric raised garden bed, 1.28 gallons, and grids plant growing bags, 3 by 6 feet, and it's at 20 bucks to get started. And here's a vertical planter for $39. Here's patio green set. So if you're on a balcony and you want to get some things that are the right, kind of plants, there's a starter kit, and it is $42. Now we're going to talk briefly about backyard gardening. So now we're out of the apartment, the high rise, and you live on a city lot, but you have a little piece of dirt in the backyard.
I have been growing potatoes for years, but last year I tried something new and the results were astounding. I asked myself, how could I grow more potatoes in less space with less work? I thought it would be a lot easier if I didn't have to dig a hole and bury the potatoes and could just place them on the ground. I picked an area that got full sun, pulled back the wood chips, and laid down a 1 foot by 8 foot raised bed I put together using old 2x10s that I had laying around. Then, in early spring, I grabbed my seed potatoes that I ordered from Fedco, and instead of digging into the ground, I took the lazy approach and just laid the potatoes on the surface of the soil 6 inches apart. The potato plants will sprout from the eyes, grow upwards, and the potatoes will form along the roots of the plant. So it's not necessary to dig a hole and place them in it with this method of planting. I went through and laid all my potatoes out. I planted some chieftain potatoes, some dark red Norland ones, and some strawberry paw potatoes. After I had all my potatoes laid out, I filled up some 5-gallon buckets with my homemade soil and covered the potatoes with about 4 to 5 inches of soil. Next, I added some turbo tuber fertilizer that I grabbed from Fedco. You can just use an all-purpose fertilizer if you want, but I wanted to try this out. I took my fertilizer, I mixed it into the top few inches of the soil. After that, I watered the potatoes in, and no digging was necessary. 20 days later, the potatoes sprouted and were looking super healthy. You can see they were getting taller, so I added some soil to the bed around the potato plants. This encourages more roots to form and leads to bigger harvests. It's also why I used a 10-inch board for the frame of my bed. Growing them in a bed like this makes them super easy to maintain and conserves water, because when I water them, it stays in the bed instead of the water draining off the side of a mound. I also mixed some fertilizer into my soil when I was hilling up the potatoes. After adding more soil and watering the plants in, they looked happy, healthy, and strong. When exposed to light, potatoes turn green and develop a mildly toxic substance called solanine. So you want to make sure that you're going out there and covering your potatoes with either a mulch or some soil. 8 days later, the plants doubled in size. The color and the health of the plants was encouraging to see. At this point, I was already getting excited about the future harvest. 7 days after that, the plants doubled in size again, and you could barely even see the raised bed at the bottom anymore. And all I did was just water them here and there as needed and let them do their thing. 5 days later, the plants were almost as large as me when I was kneeling down. The size and the health of the plants blew me away. A week later, the plants started flowering. When the plants blossom, stop hilling the potatoes. The potato plants flowering is a sign that the first new potatoes are ready to harvest. About a month later, the potato plants died back, which means the tubers are fully grown, and it was time to see what kind of harvest I could get from an 8 square foot section. I laid out a tarp to place the potatoes on when harvesting. Finally, the moment of truth came. I pulled my first potato plant out of the ground, and the production was insane, like nothing I had ever seen before. Then I pulled the next plant out, and it was just as loaded as the one before. Some of the potatoes were massive. I was pulling about 15 to 20 beautiful potatoes off each plant. I went through, harvested the rest, and the production did not slow down at all. I was digging up pound after pound of potatoes. After digging the last potato out and seeing just how many I grabbed, it was time to slice a few open and to see how they looked inside. Then I took one and sliced it open. It was perfect inside, really nice white flesh. I couldn't ask for better. Next, I grabbed some crates and cut up some burlap to put at the bottom, then filled up the crates with the potatoes. And I put the small potatoes in seedling trays I had with holes at the bottom so I could cook them up first. By the end of it, I had 3 crates full of potatoes and some seedling trays filled as well. These are the potatoes that fed me and Tuck through the winter. Growing potatoes like this is super easy because you don't have to dig at all. It's also really easy to hill the soil up around the potatoes because it keeps it in this small area. Plus, I used less soil because so much of the bed was just filled with potatoes. I was able to squeeze potatoes into a small, narrow area, giving each potato a 1 foot by 6 inch section to grow in. Another thing is this lazy style makes rotating where to plant potatoes simple. All I have to do is pick this bed up, move it to a new location, drop it down, place some potatoes at the bottom, and cover them up.
Corn, not this. It looks very similar, but that's sugarcane. During the potato famine, the USA sent tons of corn to Ireland in order to help the starving population. And then the Irish made bourbon out of it. Only joking about the bourbon bit. No, they survived off corn chips. And of course many other things derived from this wonderful grain/vegetable, depending on how it's consumed. Corn is one of the 3 biggest plant-based food sources in the world. Rice and wheat are the others, in case you're wondering. But unlike rice and wheat, corn can be grown effectively on a much smaller scale and still produce a lot of food. Corn has a compact and upright growing habit which saves space. It can be interplanted in the garden with other crops like beans and squash to utilise even more space. And corn grows as fast as grass, because it is grass. Just like commercially, homegrown corn has many uses, from eating it straight on the cob to making flours, grits, tortillas and popcorn. All these things can be easily done at home without too much effort, making corn extremely versatile. Even the whole plant can be chipped and put back into the garden as a nutritious mulch. No wonder corn became such an important crop for humanity after its discovery in Mexico, and now it's grown on every continent around the world except for Antarctica. And I encourage you to grow it as well, because the way things are going, we're not going to be able to afford to eat at Taco Bell.
Those of you that don't know what the High Performance Garden Show is, this is your gateway to learning how to create those amazing gardens that you wish you had. We'll show you how to create an easy, fun, productive, and organic garden. We follow a high-performance garden for 33 weeks from the seed to putting it to bed at the end of the season. This tiny 128 square foot garden produces over 800 pounds of food worth over $2,500 in one season with only a 15-minute a day commitment, and all the weeds from this garden fit into 1 pint jar. This show is a demonstration of the type of garden you can grow with a high-performance garden education. So if you are tired of blisters, backache, sweat, and tears, and you want your garden to be easy, fun, productive, and organic, then this is the garden education for you. The show is free, it's online, and you can watch it anytime. There are 7 seasons, that's That's over 230 episodes to watch. I have people who binge watch the show and say it's better than those popular streaming channels. Go to thelivingfarm.org/high-performance-garden-show to sign up.
The High Performance Gardening has lots and lots and lots of videos that are free online. It's on your handout near the bottom of the last page of how to get there. She also has a course that you could sign up for, but there's lots of videos that are free. Here's some examples of some commercially made available on Amazon planters. This is a vertical gardening planter for $69. Here's ready-made planters. This one is $155. Now we're going to briefly touch on hydroponic. That's planting with water without soil. This particular guy, I think he lives in a really cold area, so he made this in his basement, and he was able to make a wall of vegetation with circulating water with nutrients in it. And there's no sound that I've got on it, but it gives you an idea. And if that interests, there's the grow light. If it interests you, you can search on the internet. But he made it all out of PVC pipe and has different kinds of plants in it. Now here's some guys making a bin into a hydroponic self-contained unit. They show, there's a YouTube, it's called Family Plot, and you could watch the whole thing and they'll tell you how to do it. But basically they take a bunch of PVC pipes and they take a tote and they build this thing and have holes in the top of the lid for the little, where the plants go. It's pretty cool. For the sake of time, we'll just jump ahead. So here's some ready-made hydroponic systems you can buy. Here's one for $30. Shoot, it's got everything, pump and everything. This one here's got the grow lights, $79. Here's a hydroponic growing system that's vertical, $177. These are two companies that we recommend for buying seeds. West Coast Seeds is in British Columbia, westcoastseeds.com. And Baker Creek, is that an Adventist one? It is. Baker Creek, rareseeds.com. Whole Earth Seed Catalog is what they call it. So we have some seeds from West Coast Seeds and Baker Creek that you can take a look at. Again, if you go to our website, preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com, you'll find all kinds of resources. I'm going to briefly tell you about the site, and then you can, we'll do something with the seeds here. So if you go to the website, the beginning of it looks like this, and the first section says recommended resources at the bottom. So, of course, the books that I've written are there. This is the Sustainable Country Living. By the way, after I wrote that book, people in the seminar said, well, that's fine. You wrote this book about how to be physically prepared, but isn't spiritual preparation more important? And I said, absolutely. So we wrote a book about spiritual preparation for the time of trouble. That's available at Amazon, and we've got a few here. And then when I got sick last September, I then was stuck at home all fall and was able to spend the time to finish the third book in the series called When Will These Things Be? And what that's about is I would do seminars about, well, you need to grow a garden big enough to be able to live on for a year. And I give an example in the book of a family of 5 that did it during the Depression on 2 acres. But anyway, so people would say, well, how big of a garden, how long do I have to be able to live off my garden? Is this a matter of months? Is it a matter of years? What is it? And, Jesus said, pray that your flight be not in the winter or on the Sabbath day and all that. Well, that tells me it could be longer than a couple of months. And so I researched there were three times in the Bible where Jesus was asked, how long will these things be? The first one was the disciples. You'll remember that story. And then the other 2 or 3, I think it is, are in the book of Daniel in chapter 12. So I did a lot of research, and this book has all the Adventist Bible students I could find that studied this subject and explained their view on how long will the time of trouble be? How long will it be for the little time of trouble when part of that time you can't buy or sell? And so that's what that book is about. Then there are other resources. Country Living is a book by Ellen White, and the Sustainable Preparedness is a book by the Meissners from Idaho, had a really big impact on us. This Country Living book here is done by Crystal Witten, who was a speaker here after COVID. She was the first session we had with the yellow ribbons in the trees. That time, she did a Country Living thing. I videotaped hers, and it's on the website. That's how we got acquainted. Strategic Relocation is a book that deals with where should I move. And this guy's not an Adventist, but he did a really good job on that. Then We Can Survive, You Can Survive. That's written by Franklin from British Columbia. Really good book. Out of the Cities by Dave Westbrook from Washington. The Country Way was written by Lloyd Amy. He was a PUC instructor. He taught a class on country living. This was his little textbook that he wrote. And the next book is From City to Country. That was we've all heard of Country Living book by Ellen White, but this book was written after that as a companion, which we don't hear much about, and it's From City to Country, and it was written by, let me look here, Arthur White and E.A. Sutherland. Okay, so that's the resources section on the website. Now these are the different big sections that would have the YouTube videos. Live seminars, this is one of them. Country Living is another section. Country Living Testimonies, that's the one where I told you about the miracle that happened to these folks in Montana. Sustainable Country Gardening, that's what we're doing. Homestead Remedies. Grid down, what happens when the power grid goes down. Wild, edible, and medicinal plants. Hydrotherapy. Medical evangelism. A lot of these came from this building. What was the name of that? BC conference puts it on, Health Share. If you're interested in that, it's really a good thing. They do it once a year in the spring. And I videoed a bunch of it, and it's on the website. End Time Spiritual Concepts, that's where we have the Bible study aspects. And then these are the Bible studies about when will these things be, from which the book eventually happened. And then at the end of these categories, they're by number, because when I put in the next video, it's the next part number. So we're at part 558, I think. The next one will be 559. So as those go in there, these are all categorized in the order in which they were put on.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild, edible, and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.